What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Brinson, your host. Thursday Night Football, Week 15 recap. Instant reaction to the 49ers clinching the NFC West title with the 21-13 victory over the Seattle Seahawks. There you go, Breech. Congratulations. You have 5 helmets in your office. So congratulations on another one of them. Actually, what do you have? Oh, you got Raiders, so you can't have division. You can't have a division sweep. Joining me to break it down, Ryan Wilson, John Breech. What's up, boys?
Hey, Breech, do you and Brinson want to hop in the old Pick Six podcast time machine and go back to the moment where you laughed at me that when I said Brock Purdy could take this team deep in the playoffs?
I'm still laughing, Wilson. I'm still laughing.
It is weird that you would like tout your 49ers helmet and then be like the guy who's like, Brock Purdy sucks. He can't win. He's a terrible person, a terrible player. He has major character concerns. You said all that about it.
I only said 11% of what you said.
That's a Todd McShay joke. I'm kidding. Nobody thinks Brock Purdy has character concerns.
He played Purdy well. I've been waiting all day.
Pull up your pants, take off the bra, and be a man.
That's a pretty good joke, though.
Yes, thank you.
See, good Purdy, good joke.
Actually,
that's why Bill.
Is that Tony Kornheiser with him? What's going on with that?
No, it's not Tony Kornheiser. It can't be Tony Kornheiser.
49ers pretty dominant performance in this game. I mean, yeah, Christian McCaffrey over 100 rushing yards. Brock Purdy very just efficient and smart for the most part. Really only had like 1 or 2 questionable decisions. The reaching out for the first down to get the first down on 3rd and 1 on the bootleg at the end. Fantastic, like veteran play. Not what you expect from the last pick of the draft in his rookie season. He has been awesome the last 2 weeks, playing mistake-free, efficient football. George Kittle was a beast, 2 big touchdowns. And maybe more importantly, Wilson, this 49ers defense looks like it might not matter who the quarterback is. They could go win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and that was sort of what we were talking about when Jimmy G went down. I mean, Jimmy G was having his best year that I can remember. Maybe I'm misremembering some of his other good years, but I think a lot of that was him, but maybe a lot of it was Christian McCaffrey, who that was the right trade as we sit here. Deebo Samuel when he's healthy, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, the offensive line, and of course the defense. All those things together seem to work out pretty well. And by the way, I might need to pass along an apology to Kyle Shanahan because I don't think it matters that this Trey Lance thing ain't working out, because if they get back to the Super Bowl, I mean, it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, it's weird because like, I agree with you. Like credit to Kyle Shanahan, you win despite the fact that Trey Lance isn't there, but maybe that should have been the informative lesson of not giving up those first round picks, because what if you could have taken those and put them, like, you're just sat where you were, take Mac Jones, and you'd have 2 more first round picks on your roster. So like, again, they're very good. It doesn't use, you know, it's a tough one to balance and to
I only say that because it's working out. So right, this isn't a situation like the Rams, for example, where they had a purpose to giving away all those picks. It wasn't just sort of haphazardly hoping that Trey Lance, a FCS quarterback who didn't play his final year because of COVID, works out, because you're trying to change things up with the quarterback position in terms of getting a better athlete out there. But it's working, so I'll just applaud the result and not so much concentrate on the process.
Well, and I think too, it's, you know, at least worth noting that, you know, they've done a pretty good job in the draft. Like, we focused on that Trey Lance thing and that pick, but I mean, like, you know, they've grabbed Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, that was 3 years ago, Elijah Mitchell last year, Talano Hufanga in the 5th round. I'm trying to just look and see who
Trey
else.
Greenlaw, Fred Warner going back in the day, Jimmy Ward. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Right. I was going to make a Trey Sermon joke, but yeah. And then, like, you know, you have Brock Purdy, 7th round pick last year. Like, they've done a pretty good job in the draft. The Trey Lance thing does stand out, obviously, as a, you know, situation where you lose those first round picks, Breech. But I mean, to what Wilson's saying about the Rams, even if we don't love a process and we criticize the process when it happens, at the end of the day, if the results show, like, the process is always important, and it's important to criticize and to analyze the process. But if they win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy, ain't nobody complaining about the Trey Lance picks. You know what I mean? It's like the you can justify it with particular results, like the Rams did with Stafford winning the Super Bowl.
Right. And that is a huge part of this, because the flip side is, if you don't, and you go into the offseason, say you lose in the divisional round of the playoff, and people are wondering, well, is Brock Purdy better than Trey Lance? And if you go into the offseason knowing you're going to have a training camp competition with the last pick in the draft versus a guy you gave away everything to move up into the top 5 to grab, that's going to get ugly. Just from covering it from a media standpoint, people going to be tweeting about it every day. It's going to be one of those things where you get the stats every day, like, oh man, Brock Purdy just threw an incomplete pass. Trey Lance is the starter. Oh, Trey Lance just threw an incomplete pass. Brock Purdy's the starter. And so it is going to create an interesting dynamic this offseason. But you know what? Like you guys just said, for right now, it does not matter, because if Brock Purdy keeps playing this well, and if they win the Super Bowl, there is no quarterback controversy. I think you just roll with the guy who won a Super Bowl for you.
That is spicy.
Hey, let me ask you something. Can you guys name who the 4 losses are for the 49ers? I'll give you the one that's like, they lost to the Chiefs. Like, no big deal. They got smoked by the Chiefs 44.
I cannot even.
I can give you one right now because we watched it prime time, and the final score is 11-10, and it was against the Broncos.
They lost to the Broncos.
Oh my gosh!
Remember when they lost in week 1 to the Bears?
Oh, the Bears.
And their 4th loss is the Falcons. Like, what the hell, man? This team has ripped off 7 straight wins.
Well, part of that, Brinson, just real quick, since you brought those up, Bears, Trey Lance's first start as like really the official starter. Broncos was after the Trey Lance injury, so Jimmy Garoppolo got just tossed in there after doing nothing in training camp. So, if you look at the losses, kind of excusable. The Falcons one, I think, is the only one that's kind of inexplicable.
And remember, with the Falcons lost too, they lost that game, and we were like, well, this is why Jimmy G was practicing on the field by himself. Like, this guy just can't get it done. And then he started getting hot, and then Purdy's taken over. And again, they've won 7 straight. They won the division, so that's clinched. They are locked into no worse than, if we're being realistic, the 3 seed, right? Because the NFC South winner is going to be the 4 seed. Cowboys likely going to be the 5 seed. So those 2 spots are locked in. The question is, how high can the Niners go here? Because if you look at their remaining schedule, they have Washington, at the Raiders, and the Cardinals. It would not be crazy at all for them to win the final 3 games of the season, finish 12-4, and then I think you very realistically, start talking about, the Eagles are 12-1, so they're I don't think Philly's going to lose out, and San Francisco probably won't catch them. But Minnesota, man, I don't think it would be outrageous to suggest that we probably shouldn't even bring up the Vikings out of nowhere to drag them, but like it wouldn't be outrageous for the Vikings to drop a game and the 49ers to leapfrog them into the number 2 seed, which just becomes interesting, because then all of a sudden it's like we were talking about the Lions sneaking in as the 7, and now you might have to face whoever's the 7 doesn't want to face the Niners as the 2, I think is my point there.
So as we sit here coming into the nice game, they haven't updated yet. Our buddies of Football Outsiders have the 49ers as the 3rd best team in terms of value per play, DVOA. Last season, the 8-9 Vikings finished as the number 16 team according to value per play. What do you think the 10-3 Titans are currently at in terms of value per play, DVOA, advanced metrics?
12.
19.
21.
Ooh.
That's how lucky they've been. So, you can take it
personally.
personally.
The Vikings.
The Vikings.
Oh, you said the Titans. Sorry.
Yeah, the Vikings. So, you can take it personally if you want in terms of people not being nice to Minnesota, but the fact is they've been incredibly lucky, and you wonder if that luck's going to start to even out. And that's to your larger point that I think the 49ers are in great shape. I don't know what Stephen O's numbers say about the 49ers chance to win coming to get the number 2 seed. I'm sure he probably hasn't run the simulations just yet since the game's over, but tomorrow we should know, and I would imagine that it's going to be relatively high.
Yeah, I think it's you look at the Vikings and they have remaining.
Real quick, before tonight's game, the 49ers had a 13.88% chance to win the Super Bowl in Stephen O's simulations, which is the 4th highest of any team in the NFL, behind only the Bills, Chiefs, and Eagles.
Yeah, we saw it when Jimmy G got hurt. We're like, well, that could be it. And the 49ers odds didn't budge. The Super Bowl odds just stayed at 9-1.
By the way, if the Vikings lose this weekend, San Francisco's number 2 seed. They have a better conference record.
Yeah. And the Vikings the Colts this weekend at home, Giants at home, at the Packers, and at the Bears. Again, those are 4 games where the Vikings will favorite at least 3 of them. I don't know that Packers line will be weird depending on how Aaron Rodgers plays the next 2 weeks. Very possibly favored in all 4. Could easily win all 4. If they drop 1, which is entirely possible, the 49ers are in pretty good shape to go and capture that number 2 seed and then have, home field, except for when they potentially go to Philadelphia in the conference championship game. So, back to this game, back to the individual game. The Seahawks, man, I mean, the Seahawks draft class has been outstanding. Like, correct, all the credit in the world to Pete Carroll and John Schneider for rebuilding this team on the fly and getting this draft class going. But the 2 rookie tackles looked like they were like being told they were blocking for Russell Wilson, or maybe it was just Nick Bosa destroying people. I would venture a guess that when Caesars re-releases the odds, and I don't believe they're up yet, that Nick Bosa will be the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year, and we'll have flipped that with Micah Parsons, or they're at least both like minus 110 or something like that. Thoughts on that and the Seahawks offensive line, Wilson?
I'm not going to blame the offensive line for going up against the best defense on the planet and struggling. Both rookies. I mean, there's only so much you can ask those guys to do. So yeah, and we said earlier the defense is going to be a big part of this 49ers run because you're not asking Brock Purdy to do a lot. Purdy went 11 for 11 to start the game, which is certainly noteworthy. But it just does feel like Geno's coming back down to earth, and I don't know if he's feeling the pressure of having to carry the defense, which is not very good for Seattle. Or needing more out of the running game. Ken Walker came back and played tonight, and he was okay. Ripped up one long run, or just being Geno Smith again. I don't know, but I think it's fair to say that these teams feel like they're about where they should be at this point in the season, given how they played. And Breech, I would imagine, add one more element to what's going on in Seattle. What is Billy doing?
That freaked me out, man. I was like, whoa, hey. By the way, the Seahawks, just to before Breech dives in on that, they had that touchdown pass from Geno to DK Metcalf with 36 seconds left against the Rams to win 27-23. They could very easily have lost 4 in a row and be what 6-8, which would just be from the start they had, it would be pretty, disappointing, obviously.
Well, that's true. But as Wilson just said, this is before the season started, everybody kind of thought this was a 5, 6, 7 win team. And that could be the neighborhood of where they end up. They didn't get there how we thought they were going to get there. But it does really feel like Geno Smith is kind of falling back to earth. And, as much as Russell Wilson got bashed when he was playing well for the Seahawks, these were the games he won when, his offensive line just disappeared and the defensive linemen were on him in a second. He would just kind of get out of there. I think he went 17-4 against the 49ers. And, not that Russell Wilson exists right now, but that's something, that's an element of the game that Geno Smith doesn't have. You get pressure on him, he's in trouble, and there's not much the Seahawks can do. And so,
not to just to push back on that. Like, I don't know that Geno is necessarily coming back to earth. I think there's certainly some regression. Like, he wasn't going to be, just like Tua was not going to be, continue at his rate of like accuracy throughout the entire season. It was very unlikely, just, even with his skill set, even with his pedigree. And the same thing, like Geno is not going to play like elite MVP caliber Geno, sort of like Alex Smith back in 2017. I do think that Geno's been pretty good, and I don't put a lot of this on him tonight. We talk about that offensive line. It's really more about San Fran's defensive line dominating than it is about Geno struggling. To me, there were some really dumb mistakes by the Seahawks, some costly penalties. The defense couldn't get off the field on some huge third downs, and Geno was forced to pass 44 times against a defense that absolutely teed off on him, knowing that the Seahawks couldn't run the ball at all. 12 carries, 47 yards for Kenneth Walker. I mean, this is the I think it's like it is the 7th straight game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th straight game where the opponent was held under 75 team rushing yards by the 49ers. Like, they are absolutely making teams one-dimensional and also rushing the passer when they make them one-dimensional. That is a tough formula to overcome. So I don't put a ton of this on Geno. I do think the Seahawks may be regressing as a whole back to not what we thought they were, but just closer to a 500 team than like a division front runner.
Well, I mean, if you had 6 straight games of your QB rating over 104, and now you have 2 straight under 85, I would call that falling back to earth. I mean, you can blame it. You can pin blame in other spots, but Geno's not playing to the level that he had been playing in the previous weeks. And yeah, I mean, the 49ers defensive front absolutely destroying San Francisco's offensive line definitely didn't help the cause. The fact that the Seahawks couldn't run the ball at all, and the whole entire offense was the success of it depending on whether Geno could throw the ball, and there was just nothing there. So, I mean, you can spread the blame around, but Geno Smith didn't look like he did 2, 3, 4 weeks ago.
I mean, Seahawks gave 30 points to the Panthers last week, and like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean,
he struggled.
He was cratering back to earth. I think he's more like leveling off a little bit. I don't.
Well, that's coming back. He's not maintaining. If he played like he did the first month of the season, they probably win this game. I mean, that's how red hot he was.
If they win, it would be close.
Oh, I mean,
it was 21-13.
Oh, in the first month of the season, they lost 27-7 to the 49ers. Like,
over the first month of the season.
In the first month of the season, they lost 27-7.
When Geno was red hot Geno put him on this team. I think
Geno had less than 200 yards and an interception in the first month of the season against the same 49ers team.
I think you would agree that Geno Smith played much better over the first month of the season than he's played the last 2 weeks. That's my point.
It's fine.
Okay. I mean, I didn't think that was a contentious thing to say out loud, but it seems like he took issue with it.
I mean, in the first month of the season, in the first month of the season, he had back-to-back games against San Francisco and Atlanta with a passer rating under 100. So, like, was he? I mean, like, if you're talking about regressing with two, I mean, he said two-week stretches of a passer rating under 100, and that's it. Otherwise, he's been pretty steady throughout the season. So, like, if he continues to do this, and he plays like crap against the Chiefs, and he plays like crap against the Jets in a massive revenge game, then yeah, like we can start talking about like a full-blown regression. But I don't know, pump the brakes a little bit is all I'm saying.
Okay, yeah. I don't think anyone's mad at Geno, just that he hasn't played as well as he did earlier in the year.
Right, and I think Wilson's kind of referring to week 4. When you lose 2 of your first 3 games, and the Seahawks looked exactly how everyone thought they were going to look. They got a lucky win against the Broncos in week 1. I understand.
The argument is that like he's not playing as well as he did the first month of the season. He had 2 terrible games in the first month of the season.
Well, whenever he was red hot,
I understood his point. He is basically saying since week 4, when Geno has been good, he's been good. But I think the bigger question is here: is Geno Smith and the Seahawks, are they still good enough to get in the playoffs? Because it feels like this loss kind of put a dagger in those. Because
let's take a break. We'll come back and discuss: can the Seahawks make the playoffs? Next. So, Breech, continue on. Because I think it's a great question. Like, this is the Seahawks went from like team, they're like cruising the playoffs to what is it, Joe Buck in Monday Night Football did, sniffing around, which is just weird.
Sniffing around, they're loitering.
Lingering outside in the dark alley. Like that's what CBS should use for their graphic.
Well, now that you have 2 losses in a row, they're sitting at 7-7. And the problem is that when you're the Seahawks, you were circling week 15 because you're like, oh, we're going to be sitting at home on Sunday. The Commanders and Giants play each other, and we'll hop up whoever loses that game. But now you don't even do that because the loser falls to 7-6-1, and we'll still be a half a game ahead of the Seahawks. And so that is going to be pretty rough for them. So it does feel like that, if I had to pick out the Lions or the Seahawks, I'd probably take the Lions at this point just because the Seahawks have not looked good over the past 2 weeks, and they play the Chiefs next week and then the Jets, and it feels like I don't want to say their season's over, but I don't think they're going to be in the postseason.
They're trending in the wrong direction.
Very wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, at the Chiefs is a tough spot to get to right the ship. Jets and Rams, I mean, clearly the question is, does 9-8 get the Seahawks into the playoffs? We've looked at it, and there are obviously scenarios where 9 wins can get you in the playoffs as an NFC team. Everything kind of has to break your way. What's interesting about this too is that when I originally did the can the Lions make a playoff run, one of the things what I was primarily looking at was like, okay, can Washington and New York, these 2 teams that maybe we think like aren't maybe playing above their head, like will they come back to earth? I had mentioned too that, or at least I think I threw it out there in the video, it was like if the Seahawks or the Niners crater, and obviously the Niners are doing the opposite of that, but like if the Seahawks crater, that really opens the door for the Lions, knowing that, the Giants have to play Washington. And then in week 16, they have to, Washington's at San Francisco and the Giants are at the Vikings, right? I mean, we could have a situation where if San Francisco beats Washington and the Vikings win and the Lions can take care of the Jets and the Panthers, I mean, they're 8-7 and the 7th seed going into week 17, like before even the final week of the season.
Yeah, and you look at these schedules, if you're watching on YouTube, We have them up there, and the Lions clearly have the friendliest schedule here. They have
the friendliest path, would you say?
The friendliest path. There's a path. They have the third easiest strength of schedule over the final 4 weeks of the season with the Jets, Panthers, Bears, and Packers. And the tough part is obviously that 3 out of those 4 games are on the road, which isn't ideal. But as Brinson just said, there's an absolute path. And then you look at the Giants, or the loser of the Giants Commanders. Whoever loses that game, the Giants have the Vikings in week 16. The Commanders have the 49ers in week 16. Very good chance that both those teams lose in week 16. And man, as Brinson said, you got to feel pretty good about yourself if you're a Lions fan. And that's important because Lions fans don't get to feel good about themselves very often.
So you're telling me there's a chance.
And then you look at week 16 and you can see it here on the thing, but week 17, Washington hosts the Browns and the Giants host the Colts. Now, what gets really interesting for me, and I've sort of been, I think I've referenced this plenty over the past couple weeks, but week 18, the Seahawks get a Rams team that is waving the white flag and willing to sit everybody. The Lions are at the Packers. I don't know, if the Packers are out of it, I don't know if they're going to run Aaron Rodgers out there and run the risk that something happens to him, or or if he just wants to try and keep the Lions out of the playoffs. Lord knows he may be that spiteful. But the 2 games that really mean a ton. Washington hosts the Cowboys and the Giants are at the Eagles. The question is, will those teams be running their starters out in week 18? Because that's going to make a world of difference for the Lions and the Seahawks as they try to get into the playoffs.
I would argue that Baker Mayfield is going to be playing week 18 for a job. So he's going to be out there slinging it around. And I would also say, I don't like to get on this bus with you two numbnuts, but I would imagine the Cowboys will be set at probably 5 and the Eagles will be set at 1. So there'll be no urgency to play anyone in week 18 either. Does that sound about right, Breech?
That sounds about right. Just the Cowboys are so far ahead of everyone else in the wild card race, but so far behind the Eagles that it does feel like that's going to be the situation. And both those teams, the Cowboys and the Eagles, are going to go into week 18 thinking, man, we can rest our starters. And the Commanders and Giants are both going to be fighting for a playoff spot. So, yeah, that definitely adds a twist to all of this.
One thing to keep in mind, though, don't be surprised if Mike McCarthy tries out Dak Prescott in week 18 at nose tackle just to see in case he needs a backup.
Just worth noting, though. So week 15, you can't see it on this screen, but the Eagles are at the Jaguars and the Cowboys. The Cowboys are at the Jaguars and the Eagles are at the Bears. Let's assume that they both win those games. Then they play each other in week 16. If the Cowboys win that game, they're just a game back of the Eagles. And we'd have to start looking at conference record and all that, or division record, I guess, first. So, there's a chance where, and then in week 17, we have the Cowboys are at the Titans. So let's give them a win there. Just sort of walking through the machinations.
Thursday night on the road. Not an easy win by any stretch of the imagination, but I think certainly a game that they can go win. And then the Eagles are hosting the Saints. So, assuming that the chalk holds there, I would think both are favored. Then all of a sudden, the Eagles would have to play everybody against the Giants, because if they didn't, and they lost the Giants and the Cowboys beat Washington, the Cowboys would win the division at 14-3 with the tiebreaker that I'm seeing right here in the ESPN playoff machine. So this week, huge for not only the Eagles and the Cowboys, but also the Seahawks, Lions, Giants, and Washington, because if both teams win this week and then in week 17 and Dallas can find a way in week 16, they're both going to play all their starters in week 18, I would think. Well, and Brinson, I'm glad you brought up the week 16 match, the Christmas Eve game between the Cowboys and the Eagles, because if the Eagles win that, then you're getting to a point where the last 2 weeks probably aren't going to matter for Dallas because they're going to be locked in the 5th seed. And then depending on what happens with the behind Philly, the last 2 weeks might not matter for them if the Eagles win that week 16 game. So that again throws another twist into that. And real quick, I see Victor Garcia in the chat has asked if all 4 teams from one division have ever made the playoffs before. Yes and no. So it has only become possible for 4 teams in one division to make the playoffs since they expanded to 14 teams. So this will be the first time that every single team in one division makes the playoffs if it were to happen. However, 4 teams have made the playoffs from one division, but that was back when there were 5 teams in the division. So not every
Right.
team in the division made it. The last time that happened was 1998 with the AFC East. It happened 1997 NFC Central and 1994 NFC Central. And those are the only 3 times in NFL history where 4 teams from one division have made the playoffs.
Yeah, and I would push back a little bit on the idea that it looks like it will happen, if only because the way that the NFL structures these schedules, you have tons of division games in the final few weeks, as it should be, because you want those division games at the crucial time of the year, and you see it, right? Like, I mean, in week 15 we have 2 matchups, and in week 18 we have 2 more matchups. All the NFC East teams are playing each other, so I would guess that there's going to be enough beating each other up that we don't get all 4 in there, and one of Detroit or Seattle sneaks in along with probably whoever wins the Washington Giants game. But look, if the Lions and the Seahawks lose a couple games, it's entirely possible.
And to that point, if the Commanders and Giants just go 2-2 down the stretch, and one of them is going to pick up a win this Sunday, unless they tie again, that gets them to 9-7-1, which obviously beats 9-8. And so I feel like if they get to 9 wins, they're both probably going to get in. It's tough to see the Lions winning out or the Seahawks winning out. I mean, I feel like the Lions could go 3-1, but again, that just gives them to 9-8.
Lions are winning out. Calling it now. Call them a shot.
I think the Lions are going to lose this week. I don't feel good. I don't feel good saying it. Like, I'm not happy about it. I just think they're going to lose.
Brinson, why you got to say that about the Lions? Don't
Giving
trash
them
talk
bulletin
the
board material.
I just think I'm a little concerned about Jared Goff being outside. He didn't look very sharp at the Meadowlands earlier this year. He's been great. He's been awesome. Just didn't look sharp in the cold weather. It's not really his thing. Cali boy.
You guys want to hear a cold weather fun fact or sad fact, depending on whether you're a Dolphins fan?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Looking ahead to Saturday's game, I had to do a little voiceover work for social today, and I looked this up real quick. In the last 26 games that the Dolphins have played in temperatures of 50 degrees or less, which goes back to 2013, what is their record in those 26 games?
0-26.
I know they've lost their last 7.
Yeah, didn't you get some stat about that on the
but I only went back that far, so I'll say like 6-20.
7-21. Breech 7-19. Excuse me. Breech cheated once again.
So Breech,
Breech
he's like 6-20. I'll just throw it out there. Like, just he knows.
So Breech, you mentioned 0-7 in the last 7. Going back to the 2017 season, they played 14 games in 50 or below weather. What's their record in those 14 games?
3-11.
Brinson?
4-10.
Oh, Showcase Showdown goes to Breech again. 1-13.
Oh, come on! No, he went over. You can't go over on Showcase Showdown. You got to
reverse
that
Showcase
is
Showdown.
Horrible. Like that's just horrible.
So my point is that it's going to be snowy on Saturday here in central New York and upstate and western New York if you're in Buffalo. So our buddy Adam Beasley, who used to work with Miami Herald and covers the Dolphins for PFN now, said it's not like none of the players on that roster haven't played in cold weather. Maybe not, but historically the Dolphins stink when it's cold. So. Yeah,
and I think Tua was. I'm not. I guess we were talking about golf and weather. It's fine, but like Tua was like. I mean, it snows in Alabama too. It's like, dude, it's not like that. Like it snows in North Carolina, and it's like, you can walk through it and it melts when you touch it with your feet. Like Wilson's out here shoveling feet worth of snow. And like,
I didn't want to get
kicking the snow out of the way.
Right. I didn't want to get sidetracked on that, but that game's on Saturday. We won't talk before then. So I thought that was a breach fun fact.
Yes, we're gonna just so you know, we're gonna recap on Sunday. We won't have a Saturday night recap. It is what it is. We'll watch the games. We'll talk about them on Sunday. Lots of good football to talk about this weekend.
We had a Brock Purdy stat just up there.
Yeah.
With Aaron Rodgers.
What did it say?
2 of the highest QB ratings through their first 2 starts. But that's just the first 2 starts. Aaron Rodgers was not a rookie in 2008 when he made his first 2 starts. But you can see 134 in game 1 for Purdy and 117 in game 2 against the Seahawks. But when you talk about just rookies, Brock Purdy has the 3rd highest QB rating combined or average for his first 2 starts. And you want to know the 3 quarterbacks he's behind? This is one of those stats that's going to make you think, oh, maybe he isn't going to lead them to the Super Bowl.
Oh boy, who is it?
Number 1 is Kyle Allen.
Is number 2 like Nick Mullins?
Number 2 is Marcus Mariota.
Trevor Siemian. Is he the other one?
Number 3 is Scott Mitchell. Back in 1993, Brock Purdy has the 4th highest as far as rookies go.
All right, that actually, I was going to ask a question before you read that out. So, when does the Brock Purdy house of cards fall apart? Does this can he just ride this thing out because of all the other players around him, or is this thing gonna, is it gonna get blown off the kitchen table here with a strong gust of wind?
For me, I think it's going to be when they play a well-rounded team that has a really good defense, which the Seahawks have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So that's an ideal situation if you're a rookie quarterback, especially Kyle Shanahan just scheming things open left and right because the Seahawks are so bad.
I guess I would counter by saying, like, when are they going to see this well-rounded team with a good defense? Because I think they're the only well-rounded team with a good defense.
When they get to the playoffs, that's when it's going to happen.
I mean, are they?
Yeah, eventually.
Well, I guess again, Philadelphia. Yeah, I'll give you Philly. I have no problem with that. But
wait a second. What about your Tampa Bay Buccaneers? They're going to go to the Super Bowl, aren't they?
Look, I just said that it's Tom Brady's involved. If Tom Brady's involved, I'm not writing him off. Their defense is not well-rounded. It's not very good. They can't really stop the run. I think the 49ers would trash them. Washington, maybe good defense. Dallas.
They play the Commanders. Plays the Commanders next week on Christmas Eve. So
I'm not expecting some Brock Purdy complete meltdown. He has composure. He makes a lot of veteran-like moves and sort of throws and decisions. He's careful with the ball, and he's a quick decision maker who gets the ball out, in smart fashion. And I think Kyle Shanahan is just that good a play designer. Now, look, Washington could cause him problems. Wouldn't be that shocking. They got a ton of weapons, though.
Yeah. Like Sunday night when everybody's talking about that one Justin Herbert throw, like 8 yards downfield, the window was literally like 2 inches wide, and Herbert got it in there, and his receiver caught it. There weren't any throws like that from Brock Purdy on Thursday night because he didn't have to make those. So what's going to happen when the windows are tighter?
You see a quarterback having to make in a Kyle Shanahan offense.
Well, right, but eventually you get to a situation where you're going to have to make those throws to win a game. Especially, we haven't seen Brock Purdy have to play from behind when the 49ers have to throw the ball more because they've dominated these past 2 games. And that's what I'm saying. When they play a good opponent, they are eventually going to be playing from behind, and that's what I need to see from Brock Purdy. And again, it's not easy for a rookie to win in the postseason. We've mentioned it before. 0 rookies have won the Super Bowl. A rookie has never even been to the Super Bowl, and rookies are 8-19 all time in the postseason.
Is that right? 8-19.
Even Big Ben, who was 15-1 his rookie season, or 14-1 his rookie season.
So even 8-19, really? Did Big Ben win 2 playoff games?
Yeah, that's 2 of the 8. Or no, he won 1.
He
won 1 divisional round.
Yeah, they were the number one. They were the number 1 seed, and they
Joe
beat
Flacco won 2. Mark Sanchez won 2. But 8-19, 2 of those 8 wins were in games where 2 rookies played each other, so a rookie had to win.
And by the way, in the 2004 game where the Steelers didn't play in the first round and they played the Jets in the second round, I think it was the Jets, they should have lost that game 50-0. They got lucky. I think the kicker, O'Brien, maybe.
Yeah.
He missed a bunch of field goals. So it wasn't like Big Ben played
Doug
well.
Bryan, I think.
It's pretty wild just how few rookie quarterbacks have made it to the
why is that wild? It's incredibly difficult.
Last year we had
we're talking about 50 years of football, and there's been like 27 of them, 27 games, and they're all kind of modern, and like a lot of them, feature. And maybe it's because rookies sit, and it's a lot of times
we had Mac Jones last year. He was the only one, and they got body slammed.
Kenny Pickett still has a chance to win it this year.
John Wolford gets credit in 2020, even though Jared Goff ended up coming in with that injury. I think Wolford got hurt in the first quarter against the Rams. But yeah, Dak Prescott, the Cowboys were good in 2016. They lost. Andrew Luck in 2012. That team didn't win a single playoff game.
Russell Wilson won 1, right? Or did they lose the?
Russell Wilson did win 1, but he beat RG3, so a rookie had to get a win there.
Right. A rookie had to get a loss too.
Right. Well, you take out the 2 wins and the 2 losses, the 8-19 goes down to 5-17 if you don't count the rookie.
Quick math, Breech.
All right. That'll do it for us. We're back. Pick Show. It's up on YouTube. Check it out on the podcast feed on Friday. We're back on Sunday night to recap all of Week 15's
Ho, ho, ho.
action.
Ho, ho.
Yeah, we'll be a week out from Christmas on Sunday night. For Wilson, for Breech, I'm Brinson. See you guys later.